So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, whether it's climate tech, clean tech, green tech, whatever, big problems create big opportunities, and venture capitalists thrive on companies that solve big problems profitably. And at least in many people's eyes, not everyone, but many people, one of the biggest problems we have is global warming. And it's an ideal problem for VCs to attack. And personally, I've been active in the clean tech field really here in California for 25 years. But going back almost 45 years, I got my first job at a college working for a venture-backed concentrating solar company. It was great. I loved it. I did solar in undergrad and I got a job in the solar business, and then I lost my job within the first 6 months because their venture funding ran out. So I've been on both the successful and unsuccessful sides of clean tech investing. But over the past 20 years, climate and clean tech investing has been a hot category. And one of the most successful venture firms is Energy Transition Ventures. So my guest on the Energy Show this week is Neil Dykman. He's a partner at Energy Transition Ventures, and he and his partners at his firm have helped start up a number of the most successful clean tech firms, including both those in DG and utility scale solar. And I got Neil over here. He's all wound up, and we're going to really dive into this. So welcome to the show, Neil.
Well, thank you. Sorry, I missed the email back way in October on getting on this earlier, but it doesn't matter. This is good. I have been spending literally the last week trying to figure out how to find and back some startups in your world, in this residential solar and vehicle to grid and home and all the things that people have been talking about forever. And I ought to be able to get. And my partner, Craig Lawrence, who used to be at Excel Partners back in the day, and then he got up into the solar business for a few years. He told me I cannot invest in one of these until I try and buy them. So I have spent the last week trying to acquire myself a Ford Lightning with the vehicle to home package and failing utterly to even get quotes. And so I'm glad I'm on the show tonight because we need to figure this out. I am very confused why I cannot have nice things.
All right. Well, I want to get a little bit of a pitch for Energy Transition Ventures. What's the philosophy? I know what you're interested in. So, give me a little overview, please.
So this is an early stage venture fund. It's kind of like all early stage venture funds. We try and find founders and give a few $1 million of checks to founders and help them go build a business. We are very excited. We do everything in clean tech. If it has the word energy in it, it counts. Well, if we really like the business, we'll make it fit because, well, energy's in everything. The tagline of the company is energy is life and the rest is just details. But the thesis underneath boils down. We started this fund in 21. Obviously, one of the most brutal vintages in venture capital to come out of, but we're doing real well. We have some amazing founders. Portfolio is doing great. And part of it's because of the thesis we run on. When we started the group, we sat down like, well, we've been doing this a long time. What's different than, say, 2005, 7, 8, right? What's new? Same thesis, same everything, or what's changed? And what we came up with is the following. Back then, we called it alternative energy because it was more expensive than conventional energy. And if you didn't have a great policy framework to underwrite to, you were going to lose money because everything was about policy. That changed sometime, we'll call it the 2017-18 timeframe. And I remember writing about this, say 2012, 2014, that you could see the crossover point for grid parity coming for solar. Batteries were still a bit farther out, but like you could see the numbers changing. So somewhere, 5-6 years ago, all of a sudden in large swaths of the world, solar started getting cheaper. So the big thesis we have today is policy doesn't matter. Well, it does, but now it's the only thing protecting gas and fossil from the energy transition is bad policies and bad regulators and building codes and all the rest. And this low-cost wave, with a terawatt of solar manufacturing capacity in China going, flooding the world, a couple of terawatt hours of batteries capacity out there. This per year, enough to rebuild the entire U.S. grid is now there. So we should have it all done. Like climate change this is not a discussion anymore. There's no point in having a debate, except we never got a carbon price and we can't seem to get all these batteries and solar plugged in because of the government. So that's kind of the thesis of ETV is this massive, awesome wave of low cost crystalline and silicon. Rule number one, never bet against crystalline and silicon. That is changing the world, and we want to ride those waves, find businesses that benefit when you can get a hold of cheap solar and cheap batteries and cheap electrons. And CO2, well, it should be abated for $20 a ton, not $200. That's just the way the world should work. There's no reason not to. Hell, you could buy an oil company for $50 a ton, maybe 40, and just shut the entire thing down if we wanted to. So anything above that is pipe dream fantasy. Solar is a negative carbon price, but you can't get a credit on it because you can't pass additionality. So this has been our thesis, is all economics this time, and that's it.
Yep, and makes total sense. By the way, say hi to Craig. You know, I love SunPower. I helped them out. Sunrun, we were the first customer, so you made a lot of intelligent investors back in, the clean tech 1 or 2 version, and now we're in the new version. So coming back,
so O-Power and Sunrun, you know how those turned out. Those are massive, huge, impactful companies in our world. And so I thought he was smart. I tried to get him to come join my firm back then, and he turned me down. I tried to get him to jump into a startup and do something with me a couple of years later, and he turned me down. So it took me about a decade to get him to come jump into business with me.
All right. So I want to address a really good topic. It's such an obvious question about getting your Ford Lightning to do what you want it to do. And I've approached the same thing about a year ago. I started saying, solar's really cheap. It should be cheap everywhere. It'll eventually happen. When's the best time for you to charge up your vehicle? During the day, because that's when the sun's there. And what are you going to? Where are you going to charge it? You got to charge it up at work. So we're going to assume that there's going to be eventually, because it's so dirt cheap, solar panels everywhere.
The country works from home now. You don't have to charge it at work. I mean, that's the beauty of this stuff.
Yeah, well, that's where the sun is. That's where it is during the day, right? I don't care where you charge it. Then what you can do, and here's where we break the utility.
I don't have a battery on the house to charge.
Well, here's where we break the business utility.
The batteries are almost free.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we're going to come to the.
I've done the calculation.
Okay.
You can go buy power walls for $770 a kilowatt hour, or I can buy an F-150 Lightning for $440 a kilowatt hour, and I get the truck for free. They give me a free truck and a 30% discount on the power wall. That's what they give me. All I got to do is let me plug it into the wall, but I cannot get any of.
Okay, so let me tell you.
Sell the product to give me the product to plug into the wall.
Because they don't want to do it. And let me explain what will work and what's happening. I would say they is the car companies and the car companies and the utilities. So here's what I did, because I went through the same thing. I felt your pain. I have a solar system in my house. I got a couple of batteries, 20 kilowatt hours.
My real pain. Barry, let's stop. My real pain, I want to invest in the sector. In fact, if your Ford people are listening, I will go buy as many of y'all's Lightnings as y'all want, as long as you'll open up that port and let me pull my power out, just like I can pull my gas out of the gas tank. I will set up a whole company to do that. And if not, we will set up and drop $1 million of seed money to any entrepreneur who will go take out the utility and take out these silly car companies.
Ford,
the home is the game changer.
Ford did it. They just don't know what they did.
No, they didn't. They can't sell me the product. I've been to 3-4 dealers.
Wait, let me tell you what the product is. So here's
Sunrun. Yep. They can't even give me a product. I can't get a quote.
What Sunrun was offering is not going to do what you want it to do. And so what you want to do is you want to use that vehicle battery, which you charged up on your own time. Heck, if you have a week of cloudy weather, just plug it in at a high-speed charger. You can plug it up that way. Plug it into your house and run your house from that. The way the utilities have rigged it is they don't want you to do that unless you're completely disconnected from the grid. So here's what you can do with that Ford. It's got a 240-volt, 9.2 kilowatt generator output. And you take a cord and you plug it into the truck and you plug the other end into a gateway. And the companies that sell gateways that are pretty darn close to working, not yet, their firmware isn't working, but you can plug it into a gateway.
All right, which is the best of those? Which one do I need?
Well, I can tell you the people to talk to. You want to talk to people at Franklin who have a generator report input. Enphase is doing the same thing.
Do they listen to your show? Because I'm going to go find their little CEO's phone number and email, and I'm going to email them tomorrow.
What town? New Rochelle?
The Franklin people, do they listen to your show?
Yeah, I had them on. The Franklin people are headquartered in San Jose and actually in New Jersey, my home state. So Franklin will do it. Enphase will do it once they've got the firmware working. And, I got toured to their factory, and they're showing that capability. SolarEdge can do it. And there was one other, and Tesla can kind of sort of do it. But I kind of focus on Franklin, Enphase, and SolarEdge. So you plug that truck into the generator input of their gateway. And when there's a blackout, then it automatically pulls energy from the truck. Power the house. 9.2 kilowatts, it's plenty. When the blackout stops, you can go back to grid power. You can go back to battery power. Maybe even you can stay on vehicle power as long as there's plenty of juice in there.
So you just told me they built this very nice, expensive system that is supposed to run my house, and you need me to hack it through their little generator AC switch in the back.
Yes.
Okay, that's nuts.
That's why.
That's nuts.
It works.
They built a whole product that is supposed to simply seamlessly power my house. How hard is it?
They built it so that contractors can send 240 volts of AC power to a green field where somebody's starting to build a house. That's why they built it. They didn't think that people like you or me would say, hey, let me plug that into my house so I can give the middle finger to the utility. They didn't think about that. But that's what you can do.
I want to back a company that enables normal Americans to cut the cord, meaning the utility line. I want people to be able to Netflix the utilities. Back in the day being 2,000 years ago, one of the Roman senators, Cicero, would get up and he would give all his speech about Carthage, and he'd end every speech, no matter what it was about, with Carthago delenda est. Carthage must be destroyed. The only motto that matters today is utilitato delenda est. The utility must be destroyed. This is why we can't have nice things. If I can't cut the cord, I at least want to cut them down to basically their base rate customer charge.
So they're going to do, right, they're doing everything in their power to keep their monopoly, and they make it difficult. There's a law in California, probably other states too, that you can't connect power from one building or parcel to another. I can't run an extension cord from my house over.
I've run through that. So you try and get a permit to run a piece of utility line across a property line, and your life goes to hell.
Yep, you can't do it. But what you can do is charge that truck up at home during the day or at work or even at a high-speed charger and drive that electricity to another place. That's why they're getting screwed. That's why this makes so much sense. You can drive the electricity in a big honking battery instead of just run a wire. So let's work on that. And I can point you to the right people, CEOs, whatever, at these three companies, and you can talk to them. And then, we're big companies. We're not sure we really want to do that, and maybe you want to go a different direction. But it's definitely possible. And I am looking forward to the time, and I've had conversations with this a lot over the last 6 months, where I can disconnect my house from the grid. I've got solar. I've got a couple of batteries. I've got a Ford Lightning that gives me 9.2 kilowatts at 131 kilowatt hour battery. That's the way to go. And the utilities will do, you have to realize, the utilities will do everything in their power to stop that because it's such an obvious, easy thing.
Well, that's nice. I'm waiting for us today where I can buy a product where they have to scramble to try.
Yep.
That's exactly the world that we need here.
Yeah.
And we're so close. Like I'm calculating it up, right? We're so close. The battery is free or the truck is free, depending on which you want to count, right? We now established that. The solar modules, I go on Facebook Marketplace and people will sell brand new pallets of them for 25, 30 cents a watt. Just like, hey, the cost is having to drive over in my pickup truck to pick them up. That's the cost, like $2 a mile to bring them to me. Like according to the last guy I was looking for on Facebook Marketplace, the hardware, you told me earlier with the inverter for a home is what?
$1,500, $2,000. Yep. Depends on the size.
Great. Yeah. And so $1,500 or so, somehow that system that Sunrun is building, they are without the charger, they're charging like $4,000. And you know what? That price, it appears to be the same price whether it's a 4 kW or a 10 kW inverter. So literally, I'm just paying for their packaging.
No,
and there's a charger on top of that.
Yeah, the main inverter companies right now are making the same size inverter, whether it's 4 kilowatts or 10 kilowatts, and exactly the same. And they just have software settings that allow it, we're going to allow it to go up to 10 kilowatts.
10 kW. Yeah. Exactly. So, Skip, I'm looking at the hardware on this. So my house, I have 600 kilowatt hours to 2,400 kilowatt hours a month. I don't pull very much. It's just a normal house. There's nothing.
That's almost abnormal. The average is 1,000. You got to run the air conditioner more.
So in August, I'm at 2,400 or so.
Oh, okay.
Right now in December, I'm probably 600. Yeah. Right. So the F-150, there's enough batteries sitting in that thing to run my house for 2-3 days to a week.
Yep.
That's just nothing go in. This is awesome. So the modules, but let's say I need 10 kilowatts of solar on my roof. Now, granted, I probably can't fit that much on my roof because I have some big, pretty oak trees. That's why I don't have it on my roof now. But let's say I went and put that on there. That's $2,500 off of from the distributor right now for the materials, $1,500 for the inverter. Now I'm going to have to pay $4,000 to get the little Sunrun package unless I do your hack. But let's say we can get just a good product direct. I need a charger, which the inverter should be the charger, but somehow they're not making that for me yet. So let's call it $2,000 plus my $2,500 or $3,000. Let's round up to $5,000, and every piece of material I need to take my house off the grid shows up on a pallet in the front lawn. So $5,000 is less than I will pay for the furnace or the HVAC when I go have the HVAC redone. But somehow the bid quotes you get from solar people, they show up. They're like, hey, we would like you. What's your utility bill? We'll give you a cheaper rate. We'll finance it, PPA. They pay that dude a huge commission. Yeah, and all of a sudden I'm paying like, well, hang on. This is an awful deal. I'll tell you what, I'll give you $5,000. How many hours is it going to take to do that? What do you want? $100 an hour? $200 an hour? Doesn't matter. I'll pay you by the hour, and I'll just stick it on my credit card. I know people who buy refrigerators that cost more than this.
So Neil, I want to point you in the direction of something that I know is going to be solvable, which is this vehicle to home. And I'm going to give you some of the caveats about why solar isn't cheaper. Because in 2007, I was scratching my head, and because I was the big installer in California, I said, why is it $6 a watt here? I said, why is it $6 a watt for solar in California, and it's $3 a watt in Germany? This was this is almost 20 years ago. And I went to Germany, and I met with like 6 or 7 solar companies with my friend Jeff Brown, and we just drove around having a great time drinking beer and driving at different times, obviously. And we could never get an answer. I don't speak German. And I was at one of the last places, and I said, show me the paperwork you have for connecting. And they looked at me like, paperwork?
What paperwork?
What paperwork? And I'm like, And so they had an invoice with how much it was going to cost, with what they were installing. And then they went to the internet and they went onto this thing called the KfW bank, and financing was automatic. And so it continues. Average solar cost in California is probably around $4 a watt, in spite of the fact that you can get the stuff really cheap. But
it should be a tenth of that.
But it's not. In order for companies to stay in business and make a profit, it's higher, and it's mostly the paperwork, but there's a lot of other stuff. So I don't want to dive into it. But the good news is you're absolutely right. We have this benefit of making energy, and the more panels we make, the farther we go down the learning curve, the cheaper it is. So it went from $100 a watt to $10 a watt to $5 to $1. Now they're selling them in China for 20 cents a watt or less, 10 cents a watt. So it's coming down. It's kind of like
panels now free in the equation. It literally, if
the panels are free.
That over 5, 10, 15, pick any amount of years, the module is effectively free. The battery is almost free. Ford is giving you an entire truck if you buy their batteries. It's like, would you like a toaster or a truck with that? I would like the truck.
Yeah. So I agree.
But you're still at $4 a watt.
But we're not going to change that anytime soon. Even if panels were free.
Yes, we are, Barry. We're going to back somebody who wants to change that.
Okay.
We're going to. That is the game.
And there's some big improvements. There's something called the solar app that was created that is that's saving some time.
I called every single customer that NREL had on that solar app. I got on the phone with them. I introduced them to like 3 or 4 or 5 cities. Yeah, and like, hey, call up city administrator, happen to be people I know. You should use this. It's awesome. I talked to a customer like, oh yeah, it's all online. It's very great. I don't have to drive out to the middle of nowhere anymore for all these permits and inspections. Yeah, we just sign off. It's fantastic. But it's not being used.
Well, we're using it, and initially we didn't use it because we installed batteries in almost 100% of the systems, but now we're using it in most of the jurisdictions. That's great.
Oh, can you not do batteries in it, I guess? Okay.
Well, no. Now you can. Initially you couldn't, and now, because there's all kinds of battery regulations now we're doing, but that's not the issue. You know what the bigger issue that's killing us right now? The utilities are dragging their feet, PG&E and the others. They're making it so difficult. They're creating so many rules. They're delaying everything, and that's an absolute nightmare. And we got a big payroll. You got to charge enough money so that you can survive for 6 months while the utilities get around to reviewing your application 3 times and correcting the 3 mistakes and finally accepting it. So there's that utility business model that's in the way. And so, but one thing, I'd love to get your insights on this. What happens when energy is not 64 cents a kilowatt hour is what it is here in California. What happens when electricity, even from everybody, is 10 cents a kilowatt hour? And Neil, that's what it is when you're putting in solar for $4 a kilowatt hour. But let's say it's only 10 cents. What industries does that blow up? You don't
10 cents. I have no interest in paying 10 cents. The wholesale power rate in Texas is 3, 2, whatever. Yeah, Yeah, it's the expensive part. Energy is already free, Barry. The only thing that's expensive is power. Power is not free. Energy is now free. Distribution is not free. Labor is not free. The energy is free. Like when we talk about your German story, what about this German balcony thing that made the news, call it 18 months or so ago, where Germany decided, okay, we'll just let you plug generation straight into your wall socket as long as it's less than 800 watts. And magically this, people in agency problem of tenants and renters and multifamily apartment, they'll never do it. Oh yeah, they will. You let them plug it in without having to call for some inspection or the government. They just plug it in and they'll generate.
So
we'll knock a third of the load.
I responded to a DOE proposal on that about in 2012 or so, and it was plug and play solar. And we looked at that exact application. And I developed, I don't know if you know, but my company, Akina, came out with very first AC module. You could plug it into the wall. We did this in 2009 or so. The first AC module, got UL listing for it and everything. So it was kosher. But the electric code rules are that if you're going to plug it into a wall socket, it has to only put out as much power as isn't going to fry any of the wires. So that's a problem. In Germany, there's a way with a relatively small system you can get around it. Nobody in the U.S. is going to be able to sell that unless they can prove to the local inspector.
Let's change the rule. We'll change the code.
Well, you can't change the code because the problem is the wire in the wall. But there are devices that you can use that would keep the wire in the wall from overheating. So there's a way to do that. Now, the interesting thing about Germany, because I kind of was all over that story too. Put it vertical on the wall.
I have rewired entire houses for $5,000. Like the whole thing, every fixture, every switch, all the wires, the breaker box, all of it. Okay. I literally just will pull all the wires. You can replumb a house for $5,000 or $7,000. You can sure rewire it. It's not hard.
Yeah, it's not hard just to take 5 of those things, plug them all together. A company called SolPad tried. They never really got too far. But you take 5 of those things, and each of them's putting out, say, I don't know, pick a high number, 400 watts. You got 2,000 watts. You run a circuit, you put it into your electric panel. You could do that. One of the dilemmas, and this is where Germany has an advantage, they're at such a high latitude that vertical is not so bad. But you get into Houston, it's 90 degrees. You really want the thing tilted at 20 degrees. But it doesn't matter. You're still going to get energy if it's on a south-facing or west-facing or northeast-facing roof. If you put it on the north, you're not going to get swamped.
If I don't have to call an installer, and if I don't have to deal with the government, then it really doesn't matter if I only make half the performance off of it. The module is so cheap. They'll sell you a module online for $60.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, and that gadget that they're selling in Germany probably goes for like $500 for each, and it puts out 300 or 400 watts.
That's got a huge margin in it, and they're flying off the shelves.
Yep.
What do we have to change? Can you get me a list of the things that we would have to change to accomplish that here? What laws do I got to change?
The hardest thing to change is the National Electric Code, which goes in like 6-year code cycles. But
true,
there are ways.
But I don't have to change that because the city's adopted. Well, can I just hand a model law to a city and say national code except this right to generate permitless solar right here?
Well, you have the right to generate, but they're not going to allow you to do anything.
They don't have a right to generate.
Well,
they have the right to make it so hard that your right to generate goes to zero. No, that's what's happening.
You have the right to generate as long as it's generating safely. So no city will allow you to put anything if the inspector, right or wrong, thinks that, it could cause a fire. And they all rely on the National Electric Code to define that. So, all right, let's keep going. Let's talk about the utility business model. How do we change that? That's the biggest impediment.
With vehicle to grid, with vehicle to home. Only way to change it, the only way practically, is to buy some of the utilities and just shut them down, or take the vehicle to home and create competition. It's like Netflix. It's cutting the cord. Until the cord cutting is physically possible, they will still continue to cause us to not have nice things, and climate change will not get solved. The moment you can cut the cord, we will force the change. That is why this is so important. There's nothing more important than unleashing the massive amount of batteries out here to allow individual homes to plug in and getting the cost of solar down to the 50 cents a watt that it should be, so that we can have nice things. The only way we're solving climate change is that. If we fail to do that, we're not going to solve it.
Hey, so I guess a question, because candidly, Sunrun and Tesla are the 2 companies that were closest to being able to do this. And they also do a lot of virtual power plants. I kind of scratch my head and think, why haven't they done this? And I have kind of a paranoid conspiracy reasoning. And the reason is that Tesla likes to sell utility batteries, and Sunrun likes to sell virtual power plant concepts to utilities. So both of those companies, in my mind, may be conflicted when they look at trying to do exactly what you and I want to do. So we got to go around them. That's the way I would say.
I don't generally subscribe to conspiracy theories. I generally look at what their incentives are, right? Tesla over the years has been very busy selling cars, and now they're very busy selling batteries. My guess is if Elon had not bought Twitter and he was bored, he would have gone and dealt with this. Maybe he'll get to it in 2030. It's like all the pieces are in place. Sunrun, I don't know. I was never involved in that company, so I don't know the culture and the opportunity. But what they built with Ford looks to me, if I could buy it and it didn't break when I tried to plug it in and the comms would work and whatever issue with the Ford Lightning communications was fixed, that's for $4,000. That solves my problem. But I can't get one because literally the Ford dealer I can't figure out how to host in the POS.
No, you don't want to buy it because it doesn't work. I mean, if there was like $4,000 or $5,000 worth of hardware, $5,000 or $6,000 worth of installation, aggravation, pain in the neck, configuration, and at the end of the day, it's still going to not do what you really want it to do, which is use your Ford truck as the primary source of electricity for the home.
Gotcha. So what you think I need, and which I probably agree, is what you think I need is a battery system where I'm running my power line in through my battery, down through my inverter into my battery, and I'm running my home in a microgrid, in a semi-islanded microgrid configuration. Where I'm just feeding the car into my own battery. I need essentially, course, that little Sunrun thing, it's got a little black start battery in there, which only has to happen because, you don't have a battery on the house. And if I followed correctly, I've got like 3 times the power electronics I need on all this stuff because it's not wired up together, and I shouldn't need a charger because the inverter should be able to do the charging if you design it to do so, but they didn't do that. So it's just extra hardware and stuff, but it still should do most of the job.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? And I'm also looking at this. All the car companies are trying to subscribe to a new vehicle to grid protocol, which allows them to take DC power out of the battery, which is kind of great. Why invert it? And then you can take that DC power, put it into a box that's going to send AC back to the grid, or put it into a box that's going to put AC into your house. What Ford did accidentally, and what Tesla did accidentally with the Cybertruck, is they put a frickin' 9 kilowatt inverter in the truck. Not that expensive when you do it in volume. And you can pull that AC power you need from your house, split phase, 240 volts into the house. It should work. It's very close to working. And, those 3 companies that I mentioned are pretty close to making it happen. And that's where I would start.
What they didn't do is set that up in a way where it'll simply load, follow straight out of the ports. That's my pro package to, run my power tools when I'm out on a job site, which is cool. I want that too. But all you had to do was configure that so that I could go straight into a transfer switch with a little automated clip thing. And all I got to do is plug it in. It finds home, provisions, and goes.
Yep.
I don't need any comms. I just need it to load, follow the box. Now, have you seen the GM product? I got a chance to get the little demo of that today online they just rolled it out, the GM storage system. It's supposed to compete with the Powerwall. And then a few months ago, the vehicle to home package that they've got, that one's about $5,000 on retail, but it's a $5,000 on retail that includes the charger. So it's pretty much the same as what Ford is trying to sell. And at least I can get them on the phone and walk through it. She spent 2 hours or an hour walking me through the various configurations. I can download the manuals. It looks like it does this job.
Yeah,
not the DC configuration you're describing, but it looks like it does the job.
All of those systems, and I dug into the GM system much earlier this year when there was some information on it. They're all kind of designed to support utility, virtual power plant, and vehicle to grid programs. That's how they designed it. That's what those boxes do. They don't make it easy to do what you want.
Worrying about.
Yep.
I have no interest in supporting some utility's silly little program. I have an interest in cutting the cord. I don't think consumers have any interest in vehicle to grid or DER. They never did. We had technology to do. My mom, on our house in the 80s, we had a little box from what's now Centerpoint, and that little box, it's HLMP. This little box allowed you to basically allow them to monitor your AC. You just kind of stuck it on the AC, and it allowed them to chop the AC.
Yep.
And they gave you few dollars a month back for it. That box been gone a long time. Nobody cares. I don't want to support them. I want to cut the cord. We're in Houston. You're in California.
I'm the same way.
Grid work. Houston grid does not work.
Yeah, I want to cut the. There's no altruism from customers to their friendly utility. There's no such thing as a friendly local utility. They're making tons of profit, which that's the way they've rigged the rules. That's what we're able to do. So you and let's follow up more.
The other issue.
What?
The solar installers. Why are they making too much money?
Ask the ones that are going bankrupt.
Well, okay. How are they going bankrupt when the cost of their supply keeps falling and costs virtually nothing?
I'll tell
What's
you.
wrong? Something's wrong here. Why is it happening?
Because suddenly, in California, and this is happening elsewhere, suddenly their business gets more complicated. It's harder to sell. There's delays. So here's a bizarro fact. When solar modules were
hard to sell is because they overprice at $4 a watt. Of course, it's hard to sell. Well, $1 a watt, they'll move like hotcakes.
But then they can't afford the $2.50 a watt it costs to run the business. That's kind of my reality.
Why does it cost $2.50 a watt to run a business? That makes no sense. Why are we even talking about it in watts? It's like, okay, the hardware package to run my house is, call it $5,000-$6,000. Actually, probably less than that. It's probably $4,000 in hardware. I can probably nickel it down to $3,000, maybe $8,000 or $10,000 of hardware if I were buying the battery. Just a full hardware stack. That's to run my whole house. The labor to do it is not that many hours. So something's wrong. The materials markup on the effects.
Hold on. I agree. And in Australia and in Germany, it's half the price. And there's vibrant companies that are selling at $2 a watt, not $4 a watt. But trying to run this business as leanly as possible, we're not going to magically fix that. But I think with the right policies, we can get to this point where we're able to disconnect from the grid, cutting the cord, as you said. So anyway, that's something that we should talk about more. I can introduce you to some of the people. Do you have any comments at all about, how we can improve the policies that are going to make it better? What do you think of the new administration, and how are they going to help us change this?
So if we're lucky, the new administration will just get rid of policies randomly, regulators, just get rid of things, just subtract. And hopefully, if we're lucky, they'll randomly get rid of one of the ones that's blocking us. The only thing protecting fossil is the government and these building codes, bad policies, electrical code, and all the rest. Otherwise, fossil would be absolutely screwed. Henry Hub gas today is half the price on a real basis that it was when I started working in the oil patch in 1997. It's still $2 and change on MMBTU and $2 an M, and the dollar's down 50 cents on the dollar since 1997 in inflation. It's like, and solar is still cheaper. The only thing protecting them is these silly little rules. So the question that we're interested in, number one, is what rules, what law, at what levels have to change for us to take the whole shebang to fix this.
So there's hard things to change, and I kind of ran into this. The really, really hard things to change are changing all the rules involved as to why our wages are high, why it's so hard to get permits, et cetera. Yeah. The one thing that we can change that's going to really help this specific thing is change the utility business model and change it so that they don't make more money as they make electricity more expensive. That's what we have to change. And
I believe the only way to do that is to get vehicle to home, one company making vehicle to home and solar on your little roof cheap enough so that customers can start, if not cutting the cord, dialing back their power use so far en masse that the utilities throw a fit, try and create exit fees and revamp the model. And in that chaos, we will get the lines company, the rate-based model broken and rebuilt. So but until then, the only other way to do it is to buy the utility and change it yourself. Now, which isn't that expensive. I mean, Tesla could buy CenterPoint for like a few percent of its market cap, right? It's like, or PG&E. What's PG&E's market cap right now?
I don't know, but they made $2.3 billion in profit last year, which was amazing. I don't know what the market cap is. That's amazing because they were bankrupt. They went bankrupt 7 or 8 years ago. So I agree. And the way to do that is to figure out how to make a viable vehicle-to-home system. When you run the numbers, and I've got some economist friends and that have done this, is we are at that point where economically it makes sense in every sunny area with high electric rates to go to cut the grid, to cut the cord.
Except for the installers.
No. This is at market prices that, as you point out, ridiculously high, and I don't know what to do about it, ridiculously high cost for solar and battery. Even at that price, it makes sense to go to cut the cord as long as you have vehicle to home. So that's what we need to solve. That's just, like you said, find the right startup, push them, have them partner with GM and Ford, and go.
Looking for? We are looking for teams that are interested in creating this change. And I don't care if they have to tell us, look, the only way to be successful is change a law, as long as they can tell me which law and which politicians, who we got to send the lobbying and the campaign contributions to, and what model law we got to write to fix it. And we are looking for teams that want to fix vehicle to home, no matter what it takes. And we're looking for teams that want to drive the price down. I don't care if you make any margin. I want the whole market. I want to change all of it. Yeah. So what I don't want is something that comes in is like, thinks $2 a watt is acceptable. That is unacceptable. If it's not $1 a watt or less, we're not interested. I don't want to talk about it because I can see the cost of the hardware and I can see the number of labor hours, and it is unacceptable that we cannot work a business model to make money at these levels.
All right. So the latter is tough, but I understand completely, and I've been trying to find this for a year and encourage the big companies to do this. How can people get in touch with you at Energy Transition Ventures if they have an idea on how to reduce the cost of solar dramatically? And I'm really personally interested in anybody that knows how to solve this vehicle to home problem so that it makes it easy for people to disconnect from the grid. What's your phone? What's your email? What's your URL?
So Energy Transition Ventures is the website. If you go to LinkedIn, you can find me. All my information is published there. And frankly, I respond to messages there faster than I do anything else. Yeah. So just come find me. We've been investing since 21. We still got dry powder. These are the areas that we want to invest in. We are looking for teams that want to launch it. And we've just kind of been running into teams that are accepting the status quo is okay. And that's what we need to find. So teams like, look, I want $1 per watt and less, 50 cents per watt home solar. I want to get the costs out and figure out how to make it easy to cut the cord. Let's kind of figure out how. I just need to back to, as Craig says, I'm not allowed to go work on the business anymore. I'm supposed to find founders and invest in them. So we got to find a few to back.
All right. That sounds good.
You're going to do this for me, Barry? This is like your world.
I've been trying to do this for years and years. I can't think of anybody I hate more than the utilities. On the other hand, at the rate they keep raising electric rates, they're my best marketing partner. 64 cents a kilowatt hour electricity going up 10 or 15% a year is a great way to sell, as you point out, expensive solar. Okay, one more question, and I want to kind of digress. What do you do for fun?
Well, talk about this on podcasts. Yeah. So, I've got a number of little projects I do. My latest little project, I've got a couple of antique buildings up in a small town in Texas called Calvert that we're about to restore. Yeah, they haven't been restored in a long time, and it's fun. I like fixing old things. Yeah, then I go fishing and hang out with my family and kids and stuff. And that's pretty much it. I've become a boring individual. I was much more fun back in the day, I think.
Well, you're a lot of fun now, and I think the other solution to our energy problem is somehow harness all your energy, enthusiasm, and excitement and somehow plug that into the house. So anyway, with that, that's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Thanks, Neil, for joining me on this week's podcast, and thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. If you missed any of today's show, you can always go to the Energy Show website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.